Please be sure to take notes for anything that I say that is not actually written here. Remember, I'm happy to help you with respect to understanding any aspect of this assignment, but I do request to see your notes. Sometimes it has to do sometimes a student's inability to understand directions or instructions or an assignment has to do with how they're processing information, and hence notes are helpful. But your taking notes also verifies that you've done your part, just like this document shows that I've done my part to make sure that you are prepared and have adequate knowledge of what is entailed in an assignment. All right, so this is a comparative analysis assignment, and I realized while modifying this assignment, because I'm always updating assignments, that I really shouldn't call this a comparative analysis assignment. I should call it an objective analysis assignment. The reason being that comparative suggests that you can only focus on showing how one thing is similar to something else, or how something is like something else. So really, I should have called this objective analysis assignment. For extra credit, you could put at the end of this assignment the clarification that I made about the title and why I said I should have changed the title. So make sure it's detailed. But of course, make sure you don't plagiarize. So you can quote me and then explain in your own words. But I would say 2 or 3 sentences for a point. Let's say 2.5 points of extra credit on this assignment. Okay, so you will use your critical thinking skills to compare, and really, like I should have said, I should have said analyze here, 2 original arguments having to do with free will. So take out the word compare here and put analyze. Your own argument and a peer's. Instructions on how to access said arguments provided further below, and I will be doing a video that shows you how to pull all of the directions together, all of the instructions, how to do it online, and hence how to do the assignment. Skills and abilities to apply. College level reading and comprehension. This applies to, of course, everyone, even if you've been out of school for a while or even if you're still in high school. The idea is that you do have college level reading abilities and college level comprehension skills. Analysis, so that's when you look at something and take it apart to see how the different parts fit together. So you'll be looking at your own argument again and a peer's argument and looking at the parts that constitute the argument and see how the parts that are functioning as statements are supporting the main point, the conclusion. If your peers did this assignment correctly, then the first statement should be a conclusion. And of course, you have to be able to interpret how they are supporting their conclusion, as well as interpret how you are supporting your conclusion, interpret what you mean when you use a certain word that you don't explicitly define, interpret how things hang together. Same thing for your peer's argument. You must show and demonstrate the ability to identify and use text-based evidence in a clear, relevant, and compelling manner. And what I mean by text-based evidence will be clarified later, either in this video or another video. Evaluation. You must demonstrate a basic command of English language writing skills. Do your best to avoid sentence fragments and run-ons. Watch out for comma splices as well. Use basic writing conventions and mechanics, and I'm talking about, academic, formal writing conventions and mechanics. So don't use abbreviations, don't use slang, no texting conventions whatsoever. Choose and use words carefully. So you have to be really mindful about the words that you're using to be exact and clear in what you're saying. Sometimes a word choice can actually lead you to distort something that a peer says or even something that you say. It could also lead to something that does not accurately portray something you yourself said or a peer said. If you have 1 or 2, 3 typos, like you forgot to put a period at the end of the sentence one time, or you forgot, or you put 2 commas too many in your whole paragraph, I'm not going to take off any points for that. So I would say within your paragraph, if you have like 3 typos or just little minor things, then I'm not going to take off any points. But if I see that you never put periods at the end of your sentences, or there's too many commas that shouldn't be there, or you have like 3 or 4 run-on sentences, then that's where it becomes an issue. Or if I see not just 1 or 2 issues with word choice, but I see 3, 4, then that does become an issue. Your paragraph should be coherent. This is one that some students really struggle with. Sometimes when students are writing a paragraph, it comes off as very choppy. There's no flow from one sentence to the next. There should be a good internal flow from one point to the next within your paragraph. Make use of transitional phrases. So look, there's a typo. Let's say that this is the only typo right here. I'm not going to take off any points because there's this one typo where there's a space lacking between this word and that word. Now, if you have a lot of these, like 4 or 5, then yes, that becomes an issue. But make use of transitional phrases, introductory clauses. This makes it easy for the reader to see why you are making a given point at any given point in a paragraph. So you might want to Google transitional phrases, introductory phrases, transitional clauses, introductory clauses. That said, especially if English is your second language, be very careful with the words that you use as introductory or transitional phrases or clauses, because I've seen students misuse some of them. One transitional clause or transitional clause or introductory clause that some students misuse is however. When you use however, you're basically saying you're about to say something that contrasts in some way or calls into question in some way or is a counterpoint in some way to something you already said. And sometimes students use however, but they're not saying anything that opposes, contradicts, or calls into question anything that they've already said. So while however might be usable as an introductory clause or transitional phrase, it's not always appropriate to use it. So make sure that if you decide to look up introductory or transitional phrases, that you're using them properly. See rubric associated with your argument construction assignment from Unit 1 to review the standards I will use to assess your writing and thinking. That would be so helpful. So you just go to the gradebook and then you should be able to click on an icon for the rubric. You might have to click on the title for the assignment, and then you should see have access somehow, maybe by clicking on another icon to get to the rubric. But look at the descriptions for each cell, for each row, for each column when it comes to all of the items on there: clarity, relevance, precision, sufficiency, communication ethics, accuracy, relevance, and keep those things in mind along with all of the instructions and expectations that I'm going over now. Pathway, step 1. So you are going to click on submit your analytical questions and paragraphs from within the Unit 3 Task 4 bundle folder. So what am I talking about? Let me go ahead and show you. And what you see right now might look different. When I was doing this video, I was still working on modifying this assignment to lessen the load a bit. But let me show you what I'm talking about here in terms of what I just read from the assignment document. So to access the arguments, the responses that you will need to work with, you are going to, of course, be in the Task 4 folder for Unit 3, which is the folder you should have linked, the folder from which you should have accessed this video. So submit your comparative and question paragraphs. So it looks like my directions are a little bit incorrect. Submit your analytical and question paragraphs. So what do I actually have here? I have submit your comparative and question paragraphs. So I'll change this by the time you get to this assignment. This will match what the assignment document says. So the instructions say that you're supposed to click on here, right? That's step 1. And then it says the respective Unit 3 Task 4C link takes you to what I call a dialectic board, but what most others call a discussion board. For another point of extra credit, which brings up the total extra credit so far to 3.5, possibly, depending on how well you do, because I actually grade the extra credit. I don't just give you the points for having relevant content. Look up dialectic. Quote a definition from an online dictionary for dialectic, and cite your source, put quotation marks, use an introductory clause to introduce your definition, and then tell me what the meaning of dialectic has to do with what you're doing in this assignment. In fact, I'll give you 2.5 points for doing that really well. Write 3 to 4 sentences. To know how dialectic board really aligns with all of this assignment, I need to see your attention to all of the instructions that I give in terms of at least generally, right? So don't focus just on this and relating the definition of dialectic to what you have in here, but also somehow, reference what I go over on this page further below. Okay, so that's it for extra credit. Now, you will see a bunch of threads. I created a thread with your name on it. you will find that the thread with your name on it has your response to item 2 of the argument construction assignment, task 3 of unit 1. Note, and I think this pertains to only one of you, if I found your item 2 response unusable for this task, I used a student response from the previous semester for your thread, the one with your name on it. You will pretend to be that student along with the thinking that constitutes said argument. Locate your response and reread it. Read the responses of your peers. So let me show you what I'm talking about. You click on here. And here you will see the threads. So I'm listed as the author, but that's because I created the thread using your submissions. But then you know which one is yours because you see your name there. Okay, so you need to read those. And later, I'm going to give you some hints and coaching on how to pick a peer argument so as to maximize your performance. So step 2, select a peer response per the following instructions. So this is just on the mechanics. This isn't on the intellectual dimension. Select a peer who has yet to get a response of any kind. The peer you choose cannot be the same person who replies to your thread. Check to make sure that whomever you choose has not already responded to you first. For example, imagine you see that Jill responded to your thread. You cannot in turn respond to her thread to get this task done. You have to find another peer. Anyone but Jill. Okay, so the reason I do this is because if I don't, then sometimes one student will get multiple responses, making it less likely that everyone gets a response. So it's very important for you to make sure that you follow this. But also, if I have an odd number of students and each student, every student is picking the student that responded to them, then it's likely that the student who ends up being the odd number doesn't get a response at all. And so that's also very important. But I want everyone to work with a different argument. So this also ensures that everyone works with a different argument. Okay, so for another point of extra credit, write a couple sentences where putting into your own words what I said here. Why do I have these requirements here? Okay, so you post your analysis by clicking on reply from within your peers' threads. This is so important. If you do not reply and post your response from within your peers' thread, not your thread, but your peers' thread, it makes it almost impossible. And I can't explain the dynamics of Blackboard and what they call discussion boards, but it makes it almost impossible for me to find your response, and hence you may not get any credit. So make sure you follow this bullet point here. This is extremely important and helpful, something that I've come up with to help you not feel stressed about getting a response to a student posted immediately. If you don't have time to type an immediate response, you can claim a peer by typing all of the following. So don't type just this part. Let's be kind of, let's reflect a kind of courteous language and communication style and just copy and paste this or just retype all of this. You don't need to use quotation marks. Just, type up claimed. Please find another peer to whom you will respond. And so that way you can work offline on your response without worrying about somebody posting a response before you get back to that peer. So you have to do this. I recommend that everyone do this. Claim your peer. Otherwise, if someone posts a response before you do and you didn't do this, then your peer gets credit for that response and you don't. So please make sure that you do as directed. So just note here, so let's say that I am... And actually, I was going to show you how to do all that right now. I can show you how to do the thing, where you claim the person. So let's say I read Julia's thread, right? I read her thread, and I decide that her thread is the one that I'm going to respond to. So what you do is you just do reply. And then down here is where you would type the message. And then you would click submit. Now, this is going to actually help me with a warning that I gave you just a moment ago. So let's say that you are entering this dialectic board. And so you read it through all the responses and you're like, I really liked Juliana's response. I'm going to respond to her thread. Well, you've got to make sure that no one else has responded to her thread in any way, whether with a full response or with a claim. And so you need to make sure you scroll all the way down, right? Scroll all the way down and see if she's been claimed. Like, oh no, somebody's already claimed Juliana. It looks like Susan claimed Juliana. So Dr. Carrillo said we can only, each peer gets only one response. We can't respond to somebody who's already been claimed, already has a response. So now I cannot respond to Juliana. But with respect to the other aspects of the instructions for the pathway, let's say that I am Juliana. Now, I, as Juliana, might go and look at Susan Carrillo's response and feel that her response would be a good one to respond to. Can Juliana respond to a student named Susan Carrillo? And pretend that Susan Carrillo is not your Professor Carrillo, but a student who happens to have the same name as me, the professor. Then student Susan Carrillo is not someone to whom Juliana can respond because student Susan Carrillo already claimed Juliana. Again, I will go over the instructions on how to make it all come together with respect to the instructions on the next page in a separate video.